Welcome to Beyond Your Job, the podcast where we talk about work, life, balance, and everything in between. I'm your host, Iris Clapper, a former attorney and writer with a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. I'm also a certified professional coach and consultant. So while that's a mouthful, the takeaway is that I'm fascinated by the psychology of work and its impact on how we live. This podcast was born from something I kept seeing in my clients, in my friends, and definitely in myself. You can be thriving in your career, but if you're burning out, it doesn't just stay at work. It permeates home life, marriage, relationships, and of course your emotional and physical well-being. During each episode, I sit down with professionals from diverse industries to gain insight, inspiration, and a few laughs while having honest, thoughtful conversations where everything is fair game as long as they're up for it. With us today is Dr. Stout, who has a PhD in forensic psychology and 2 master's degrees in forensic and organizational psychology. He's currently working on a 3rd master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. A veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard, Dr. Stout retired from active duty service in 2019 after serving for 20 years. He has worked in aircraft maintenance, search and rescue, law enforcement, and organizational leadership. He has worked in trauma and suicide intervention programs, helping people manage challenging mental health issues. Currently, Dr. Stout is an adjunct professor of graduate psychology at Purdue Global University. On a side note, Dr. Stout was my capstone advisor, and I had the honor of his guidance in developing my research proposal, which centered around antecedent personality traits for imposter syndrome. Dr. Stout is part of the crisis negotiation team and is a treatment program specialist at the Federal Bureau of Prisons, working with incarcerated individuals suffering from addiction, behavioral challenges, and lifelong trauma. Dr. Stout has been married for 22 years and has 1 child. On his off time, he enjoys spending time with his family, golfing, reading, and enjoying nature. Welcome, Dr. Stout.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What struck me immediately is, how do you have any downtime? You work full-time at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. You are working on a 3rd master's degree. I want to hear all about that.
Okay.
And you're a professor. And having had the privilege of being in your class, I know how dedicated you are to your students. So I always like to talk about work-life balance, and I'm trying to understand how you find it.
That's a great question. I think the key is time management. Some days I win at time management and sometimes I lose, but I typically go in with a plan for my day. I'm a list writer, but I'm horrible at keeping one of those calendar books. I'm terrible at that. But I usually have a Post-it note with all my to-do things for that day. I stay successful that way. But downtime is crucial for me. So I make sure that when I'm out of work or I'm not working, I'm spending time with the family. I'm doing things that are good for me and good for my mental health, for sure.
I love hearing that because we both know how important that is. You've had quite the career, spanning military service, psychology, tech, corrections. What's the common thread? I ask because people ask me a lot. What do writing and psychology have to do with one another? And for me, everything I've ever studied or done informs what I do today. So I'm particularly interested.
Yeah, for me, I think, honestly, it's about people. I get joy from helping others. I like to be a person who is dependable and reliable and a person of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, do it to the best of my ability. And if I can't, then I'll say, hey, I just can't do this right now. I think for all the different careers that you point out, that the common thread is people. And I've always just had a strong desire to work with others, help them be better. And that's one reason why I love teaching. And I've always been a teacher, even throughout my time in active duty service. I was an instructor for 18 of my 20 years in some capacity or another. And I think that's crucial, is to teach the next generation, teach the people who follow behind you. Because at some point, I'm going to hang it up, and I need whoever's behind me to pick it up and pick up the pack and ready to go.
Makes sense. I'm wondering if that earlier start and then a very long career in service informs moments of crisis for you today? Because we'll get into it in a moment, but working in corrections is by no means easy, I imagine. Did that early career set you up for that?
When I was in high school and they take all those personality tests and like what career would suit you best, military and law enforcement always came up high in mind scores. And I think that's just because I'm very super logical minded, I'm a very much a rules guy. I'm a super square in a lot of ways, which goody two shoes has been a label once or twice in my life. But I like organization, I like order, I like knowing what the next step is. Chaos bothers me a little bit. And so I think the military is obviously super good at teaching you structure and engaging in that process. And I actually got to work on restructuring certain things to make processes more effective, digging into that IO side. But even moving into this corrections role, treatment specialist role, it's still about helping people and being a role model. In a lot of ways, more than acting in a therapy kind of role, I act as a role model. I talk the talk, I walk the walk for the folks that I serve and show them that the old ways aren't the only ways to live a life and that you can be successful.
And for anybody out there, when we use the term IO, Dr. Stout and I are referring to industrial and organizational psychology, a term of art in our field.
Yeah.
How did you start working in the prison system? And what's the population like that you work with? Like the real meat and potatoes of your job?
So that's a great question. If you'd asked me a number of years ago if I had ever worked in a prison, I would have put a hard no on that. I had the opportunity to get some clinical experience. I was working towards getting a licensure as a psychologist. That plan didn't exactly go as I thought it would, but the clinical experience, the professional experience is still there, which that's why I'm going back for my third master's degree.
Because you were so undereducated. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Yes, I am a non-traditional student from a long time ago, which is a whole nother topic, but I started online learning when online learning was in its infancy. Back in the early 2000, I started online learning, and I had went all the way through during my time in the service in online schools. So I share that experience with my students as well. But getting into corrections was an unintended blessing because I still get to help people. I get to work in a place where I feel like my work makes a difference. Working with individuals, I work in a residential program where currently we have about between 60 and 70 individuals in the residential program. So they live in a single housing unit and they go through a well-established program. It's called the Challenge Program. And it uses aspects of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and community building, and teaching them to build and trust with one another. We tell them that a lot of their therapy actually comes from their peers out there in the unit, less than me, because they're the ones who have lived the life, ran with gangs, done drugs, done these things, robbed banks, murders, all the things. And some of them have overcome addiction and loss and the hardships of living in a prison environment, and helping them to work past old biases and expectations and how communication is a huge aspect of our treatment and our training in there, is just how to have a conversation with someone, hear something that you don't want to hear, and not take it super personal and not resort to physical violence or threats of violence. And so building those skills is really crucial. And really where we see some of the money made, so to speak, is as part of my job. I listen to their phone calls back home and I read their emails back home. And I can tell when someone's actually engaging in their treatment because they'll call their wife, their mother, their children, their family back home, and you can hear the change in their voice. And you can hear their family members say, since you got in that program, you've really changed.
Wow.
And so, like, for me, that's the wins. I put it on my little chalkboard, win. it's really up to them and their desire to change, and showing them that there's something better out there than what they've lived in the past.
So I was about to ask you if you think people can change, but I think especially violent criminals, which I believe you work with
Yeah.
violent criminals and some people who are in for life, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So, can people change? I believe that they can. I think that they need the right environment, the right support. It's one of those things where some of the folks that we have in our program have done some horrific things and come to recognize the consequences of their actions, feel remorse for what they've done, but also for me, like realizing that's still a human being right there in front of me, and they didn't just turn into a monster overnight. You know, there was a lot of life and things that happened to them that kind of walked them down that path. Could they have changed their mind, made a decision, said no, made a better choice? 100%, anywhere along that line, multiple times. But, you know, without the right encouragement, without the right environment, it's really hard to see something else. You know, for some guys who grew up in gang territory and stuff like that, they think that living out in the suburbs is like not even real. Like that's just a TV thing. And I'm like, no, it really happens. You can get a house out there and go get a 9-to-5 job and just be happy.
Do you think it's possible for them?
I think for the guys who get the opportunity to go home, if they're really taking the stuff to heart, I think they do genuinely want change and want to live a better life. Recidivism rates are still high, but a lot of it's how they go back, where they go back to. You know, if you're taking someone who's been incarcerated for a long time and the prison culture still has a strong hold on them, and they go back to the same streets that they came from and walking around the same people and the same dealers and same environment, why would we expect them to change? Because they have to go back out. And coming out of prison as an ex-con, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to keep a job. There's any number of things that can trip you up at any time. And we talk a lot about that in our program, about how the deck is stacked against you on the way out. But if you're doing the right things, if you're trying to live a pro-social life and following the rules, that your chances of success are greater. But you have to embrace it. You can't let the little pebbles in the road drive you off the road. You've got to be able to navigate and deal. And some of them really get it, and some of them want to get it, but they want a 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because they want that fallback. If this acting right and following the rules thing doesn't really work, I still want to be able to go back and hang with my gang members or go back to that other life. And it's like you can't really have it both ways, right? So it's a challenge.
Yet I hear so much optimism and hope in your voice. And I wonder if the therapeutic relationship is different. I'm sure that it adds a wrinkle to it, the population that you're working with. When you're working one-on-one with someone, how does that look? Does that look different?
As a treatment specialist, we have our own individual caseloads with folks. And for me, the way that I work with my list of folks is maybe different than some of the other of my peers. I take it a real personal approach. I manage my personal boundaries. I don't overshare about my life. I don't make it about me. But what I do is I give them that firm guidelines, like, here, this is the expectations, right? I'm going to work with you. I don't expect you to be perfect, but I expect you to try. Much like with my students at Purdue. And I don't expect perfection. I expect you to try. I grade a lot on effort. If I see you putting the effort in and you're taking feedback and we're moving forward, I'm going to work with you. But the therapeutic relationship looks a little bit different because working in corrections, I am still a correctional officer first. So while most of our interactions are pleasant with the other inmates, there's some people who are still trying to prove themselves or act tough or whatever. So, I mean, there's always a chance that, a therapy session could turn into something else. I personally haven't experienced that because I also don't portray that type of attitude towards them. I like the collaborative effort. In the counseling arena, we kind of look at that from like a person-centered therapy approach. where, I'm trying to connect to you on a personal level and show you that we can work together to find this new path for you. It's not for me to lay the path out. Where do you want to be? I asked them, if you imagine yourself 20 years down the road, what does that man look like? Let's say you get out. What does that life look like for you? Do you have a family, a job? Where do you live? Do you have a house? Do you have an apartment? Having that vision for yourself, because if you don't know where you're going, having a roadmap doesn't do you any good because you're just wandering.
So true. Something you said made me wonder how you balance understanding someone's trauma without excusing bad behavior and still being able to sit with empathy for that particular person's set of circumstances and still do the work you do and be hopeful all at the same time.
Yeah, and that can be a challenge sometimes. I won't pretend like it's not. I am super empathetic, but at the end of the day, I'm a father, a husband, and some of these folks have done some horrible things to other people's families. And so for me, I got some great advice when I first started in the Bureau from one of my supervisors, because in developing these therapeutic relationships, I read these people's case files. So I look at what their crimes were, I look at their court documents and see what it was that they did. But ultimately, this was the advice, is read what your soul can take. For me to provide them the appropriate treatment, I need to know what their crime is. I need to know a little bit of details about what it was. I need to know where they came from. These are the important things. Do I need to know all the gory details of whatever it was? No, I don't really need to do that. And in all honesty, I've read some of them and I'm like, okay, click, I'm closing that document, because if I read too much more, it may shift my perspective.
You keep yourself in that balanced and hopeful and ethical place.
Yeah.
By deciding for yourself how much you have to dive into that file, just enough to have the perspective, but not too much that it taints you. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. And one of the first things that I tell everyone who's new to my caseload is, look, I need you to be a better person than when you walked in the door. Whether you go home in 5 years or 20 years or 50 years or never, if you got a life sentence. I said, I just need you to be a better person than you walked in the door. If we can work towards that, let's do that. Because if they do get the chance to go home and be back out in civilization, I need them to be better folks than what led them there. And that's worked so far for me, so I can't complain. Knock on wood that it keeps going that way.
As you think about a career in corrections, was there something in particular that really challenged or shifted the way that you think about human behavior?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'll openly admit some naivety walking in the door, but I haven't really met any truly evil souls in there. I've met some folks who were probably psychopathic and have done some horrible things, but not inherently evil.
Can you explain that a little bit?
So maybe folks who lack empathy towards others. Not necessarily malicious. I just want to go out and hurt a bunch of people. TV and movies serialize these things and make them to extremes, almost comical. But some of the folks that we work with, they never really learn to be like that fully well-rounded human being. And maybe that's because they got treated poorly or abused and things like that. But some of the guys who have done some of the most heinous stuff I've read and talked to in there, they're like, I just never thought of it like that. Or they had their own weird sense of justice, and that's why they were doing whatever they were doing. So it's interesting from the objective, step back to see human behavior in that way, where obviously I grew up vastly different than a lot of these guys.
Sure.
But to see where their eyes are getting open to a different way to live and seeing maybe, I don't know, a flash of hope. You know what? Maybe I can do better. Maybe I actually can do something with my life. People believe in me. That's my hope, is to, in my own way, inspire them by believing in them and showing them that they are worth saving. They are worth being more than just an inmate or incarcerated for life. So that's my hope.
It's amazing. This is a general question, but do they express remorse to you in sessions?
Sometimes, not everybody, but not everybody's in the same spot in their treatment. And we got to, at some points, meet people where they're at. Some people do not really want to own their crimes. It wasn't me. I'm innocent, or that's not really how it went down. And I tell them, I was like, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the court of law. I'm not here to tell you what you did or didn't do. I'll just tell you what the paper says. Whether you did this or not, you probably did some other things that you didn't get caught for.
Interesting,
which
yeah.
are still related to the same behaviors. So let's work on the behaviors.
I remember when we first started talking about this, you shared with me that you felt that the most authentic your patients is when they're talking to their moms on the phone.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit? That stayed with me. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, and like I said, as part of the safety and security of the institution, we listen to phone calls. Specifically in my role, I listen to people on my caseload because I need to know where they're really at. I talk a lot about masks with them, wearing different masks in your life. If you're at a job, you're wearing your professional mask, or if you're talking to your spouse, your kids, you're maybe wearing that parental or husband-wife mask. You're talking to your parents, you're wearing that child, like I'm still your child type of mask. Mm-hmm. And so in prison, guys putting on this tough guy facade, or this I just hide in the shadows. If I don't get noticed, no one messes with me type of thing. When I listen to some of these phone calls with either spouses or children or parents, that's when some of the more genuine behaviors come out, and you see where they're really at in their treatment process. And listening to the feedback from those folks that they're on the end of the line with is important too, because I take a lot of cues from that about how their progress is based off of historical, long before I ever had an interaction with them. How's the perception of that person who's had a long-standing relationship with them see them now? Right.
And how that evolves, because we each have more than one identity and role in life, and we have societally imposed roles, familial roles, different roles, and then we also have the identities that we want to have or try on, and sometimes there's a real disconnect. And I'm hearing that's true for a lot of these people.
Yeah, I think so. And for me, I tell them, I said, the guy that's sitting in front of you talking now is the same guy when I go home. I may shift a little bit and with my family, I take certainly a little more loving or comical tone depending on what's going on. I said, but just as I am right here, right now, this is how I speak with my clients. And I said, this is me. I don't have to act like anything else. I don't have to try to pretend to be anything else. And I said, the less you put on these masks, the more genuine you can actually be. That's not to say that you can't shift a little bit in situations. Can I get more stern and more authoritarian when I need to? Yeah, I certainly can. But I don't just live in that role, because that's not what I need. I use that as a tool in the moment. I don't need to live that.
It doesn't shift your personality or your entire identity.
And they've seen that a few times, depending on emergency situations, where it goes from casual Dr. Stout, having conversations, to go lock in your cell, get on the ground, whatever it is, to respond to an emergency situation, whether breaking up fights or finding somebody high, walking around, or whatever it is. And so they see that dynamic, but they also see that my response in the way that I treat people doesn't really change. I may become more authoritarian and stern, but I'm not disrespectful. I'm not calling them names. I'm not abusing them. I'm not mistreating them. I'm just a little more stern than I normally am. Mm-hmm. In the use of force equation, which most every law enforcement agency has, you use the force necessary to gain compliance. If I don't need to go over the top if you're working with me, so I will just progress until we find the level where you become compliant and we move forward.
Is there some ritual that you engage in to decompress from your day? I know that many nights during the week you have a quick dinner and step into the classroom.
Yeah.
How do you separate? It's an intense job, even though you're probably one of the calmest people I know.
Thanks. Like for me, I do rituals that I do. For me, when I'm walking in to the facility in the morning, typically if I'm walking in by myself, to be honest with you, I say a prayer for everybody. I say a prayer for myself, for all the people in the institution. I pray that for safety, wisdom, humility. I'm not trying to ask for the world, but I want people to be open-minded. On the way home, to decompress, I listen to books on CD or audiobooks. It just helps me zone out, relax. That's my decompress time, and then I come home and put on dad and husband mode and do things around the house. And then when it's time, I put on teacher role, throw on that. The big thing is a lot of people get lost in doom scrolling and all these things on the internet and Instagram, and I try not to let that become overwhelming in my life, because I try to do things that add real value to my life or bring peace to me. I read the news, but I don't live in the news. I'll check the main pages. I look, see I know what's going on, click off, because perseverating on those things, I've got no control over. In the mental health business, we call that radical acceptance. There are just some things that I have zero control over, and worrying about it is only going to bring me more worry.
And I would say politics in the news, radical acceptance is really the only thing that we can do today. Doesn't matter which side you're on, it's just good for all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm also hearing a lot about boundaries, which makes so much sense to me. I know and I hope that some of your students will be listening to us at some point.
Hopefully.
And shifting gears to the classroom a little bit,
Sure.
because I would be remiss in not talking about your incredible and supportive skills as a professor and a guide and a mentor. What do you hope that your students take away with them from the classroom? You spoke a lot about what you hope your patients in corrections can take away. What about students? They're just starting out and you've had this incredible career.
That's an awesome question, because I really have a heart for teaching. I do get a lot of positive feedback, so I'm not trying to blow myself up about it, but I do get a lot of positive feedback from my students, which helps me hone my skills and my craft. But for me, I hope that they take a passion for whatever they're trying to do, especially like when you were going through, and since then, I ask students, what do they want to do with this degree? Society tells us a lot about go out, get a degree, do all these things, and it's okay, that's great, but what do you really want to do? If you're not sure and you're just getting a degree to get it, I hate for people to waste time and energy and money on something that's not really going to get them what they want. I have some personal experience in that. And I think it's important to have realistic expectations. Just because you get a master's degree or a PhD doesn't mean you automatically walk into $150,000 jobs. The degree is the learner's permit in a lot of ways. Get out there, practice, figure out where you want to practice or what you want to do. I preach a lot for research, because it's something that people want to shy away from. And I think some of it's the research aspect, but I think some of it's the writing aspect. Some people are afraid of writing. And I encourage them, especially in the courses, this is the time to practice your professional writing skills. There's low cost. You're not going to get fired for writing a bad report. Yeah, it may affect your grade a little bit if you don't write something great. But if you're learning from it and improving your skills, then that's the real lesson. You write a bad report at work and it sends a company down the wrong way or messes up someone's rehabilitation or sentencing in the forensic realm, you can get sued. You can be liable for things. And so I just really hope for students to really be able to identify what their passions are, what they really want to do with their degree, and then use this school educational setting as a testing ground for it. A lot of times, myself included, I got in the check the box mentality. I have to write this paper. I have to reply in this discussion board. I have to do this. instead of I get the opportunity to really look at what this person said and really engage them and say, wow, they looked at this thing in a way that I never even considered. Or they provide this example that I'm like, oh man, that's really interesting. I hadn't considered that. Instead of the, hey, good job, I thought what you said was really interesting. Very generic. I try not to punish people for it in that sense, grade-wise, but I really encourage them to have conversations.
And we take a whole class on only motivation and attitudes. I mean, that is one of the required classes. Yeah. And it teaches us a lot about what we're motivated by. For me personally, in one of the intro classes, there was an assignment where you had to write out exactly what you thought you wanted to do. And nobody was holding you accountable for it, but it was meant to guide you. And I always knew what I wanted to do because I was a co-owner of a business before. I did coach and I did mentor before I went to school. And I took a break to have a much more formal education in IO psychology, and I learned a ton, but I also had some background and experience coming into it. So I knew from day one that I wanted to be an executive coach and have my own business and do things my way. And I knew that I wanted to concentrate heavily on imposter syndrome for a whole slew of personal reasons. So I was really happy that you were there with me for that journey. And I'm wondering what stood out to you on that topic, because we did so much work around that together.
And so when you presented the imposter syndrome topic, at first I was like, wow, and I'd read a little bit about it, but I wasn't well versed. For me, your writing didn't need me to fix. You were a good writer before you got to me. I think you had a lot more experience. And was there some polishing for formatting stuff? Yeah, sure. But I think your take on the topic was interesting to me, and it opened my eyes where I'm like, oh, wow, I really connect with that because, like you said, I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of degrees. I have a lot of different stuff. But even with all that being said, sometimes I still feel like I'm faking it. Or, man, I really hope they don't figure out I don't know what I'm doing. Or do I really know what I'm doing here? And so the topic itself really connected with me because I felt that it applies in so many different areas. I know one of the areas that you and I have talked about before is like in the medical field. And I think that's a really important one, but I think it also comes across in psychology and in business and in so many other places where sometimes you just have to pretend that you know the answer or you know the best answer even though you're not sure. And then you got to just ride it out and see how it goes.
And when you do, that feeds the cycle. And then if you got the right answer, you tell yourself, wow, I faked it.
Yeah, I got lucky this time.
I got lucky. You attribute it to all external measures. And if you didn't get the answer, you're very hard on yourself. So it can be a very debilitating situation, living with that. And there are ways to mitigate it. I have a whole program of mitigation that I do with clients now around it. And no one needs to live with this situation and suffer alone.
Yeah. And like I said, for me, I was just like, okay, I know that I'm supposed to be the teacher in this role, but I feel like I'm learning myself. And so I appreciated what you wrote. And I even still to this day, I refer back to it and refer other students to take a look at it because a number of folks that are in my classes are not spring chickens. They've lived some life and now they're coming back for this professional degree to try and get that upper management promotion, start their own business. And it's scary to start your own business. And there's a lot of fear and anxiety about, am I doing it right? What am I missing? And so I think it's a great topic. I talk about it here and there with my students still.
I love doing it, and I love that you got to mentor me through that. I love that I got to meet you and that we have this friendship. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here today. But before we go, I would love for you to do a quick lightning round of questions with me. I ask every guest the same group of 10 questions, so if you're up for it.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's do it. Number 1, introvert or extrovert?
Great question. I am a introverted extrovert. So,
Invert.
yeah, I people really well, but I also like to be by myself a lot. So,
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
early bird, 100%.
What do you do for fun?
So, reading, golf with my daughter, and get out there and garden with my wife.
Fantastic. What's the last show you binge watched?
Last show I binge watched was The Terminal List. I listened to all the books and watched the show. It was actually my second go through. So really interesting show, military, traumatic brain trauma, stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, okay, this really speaks to me.
What song instantly puts you in a good mood?
Oh man, let's go with Bob Marley. It's going to be all right.
Oh, I love Bob Marley. That's a good one. What secret power would you choose if you could?
Telepathy. I would love mind reading.
Yes.
Figure
Wouldn't
out
that
who's
be
lying
helpful?
to me. Figure out who's lying to me.
Who would play you in a movie about your life?
Oh man, so my wife and I debated about this a while back, and she said Chris Pratt, and I said Matt Damon. So either of those gentlemen would be fantastic choices, in my personal opinion.
I feel like I could totally see that. Either one. Maybe
I don't know what they
romantic
do, but
for me. Yeah, maybe they're listening. So
hey,
maybe there's a script out there.
call me, guys. I'll help
Oh,
out.
definitely. Soon. Do you prefer a short text or a long conversation?
Long conversation.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Oh man, spilling or dropping things. I am notorious. We've been lucky that I haven't spilled the water down my shirt this whole time. Like, I'm not a clumsy person, but that's something that just
Gets you.
gets me, like, irrationally upset about it.
And so we just discovered your weakness. And number 10, what's the number one thing on your bucket list right now?
Number one thing on my bucket list is to get the family to travel to Italy. My wife has always wanted to go. I got to go, and so she's a little jealous about that. But mine was on a military deployment, so it was a little different time. But to get them over to see Europe and Italy, and she wants to go to the Vatican and see all that, which I highly recommend to
It's
go do.
one of my favorite places to travel, so promise you'll call me so I can help meddle in your life and put an itinerary together with you.
You got it, for sure.
I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. It's
Yeah, I'm
always
glad.
a pleasure.
Yeah, super glad to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Stout.
You're very welcome.
And that's a wrap. If you like this episode, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and share the love. You can always reach out to me through my website, ariseclappercoachingandconsulting.com.